As we said over these last days, we've opened another link in the chain of these seemingly endless stories. But in order for us to get a gleaning of what this new link holds for us, there's a reminder of an old story that gives us the possibility of capturing the secret that's contained in every story. But to do that, we have to make a little quantum leap insofar as our mind is concerned relative to the aspects of the story. So let's see if we can make that quantum leap. So there's that story about Hamid. Now, Hamid was born at a time when the vast and great kingdom of Persia was flourishing under a benevolent Shah-in-Shah. But Hamid was born to a peasant shepherd who tended sheep on land that belonged to one of the great lords of the time. But from a very early age, Hamid displayed such intelligence and qualities beyond his years that he very soon came to the notice of those who nurtured and mentored such young people, and he was accepted to attend one of the great academies in one of the great cities. Now, before he went off to enter this great school, his mother gave him a parcel, and she said, "This is to remind you from whence you came." And inside that parcel were contained his straw sandals and his homespun shepherd's cloak. Now, when Hamid entered the academy, he excelled, as was it expected of him, and he won all kinds of degrees and so forth. And after finishing his time at the academy, he was very quickly accepted into the court of the Shah-in-Shah himself, and in a very rapid space of time climbed the ranks until he became the closest advisor and in fact the Grand Vizier of the Shah-in-Shah himself. Now, the Shah-in-Shah knew of his qualities and really came to love him, and gave him all kinds of, he gave him a great palace and all kinds of rewards. So there was a lot of jealousy in the court towards Hamid, and those who were jealous of him very often whispered against him, and at a time they came to the Shah-in-Shah himself to tell him that it was noted that every day Hamid, before the time of prayer, went into a draped doorway and spent some time there before the prayers, and it was whispered that he was stealing from the Shah-in-Shah and had this treasure that he was going in to count every day. Well, the Shah-in-Shah didn't want to believe any of this, but he said, you know, if you want to prove it to me, you better show me what it is that's happening there. So, of course, as it happened, there were several of them that went to spy on Hamid, and on an occasion when he had entered this draped room. And so when they came back to the Shah-in-Shah, the Shah-in-Shah said, well, what did you find? And they showed him the parcel that was there, because in that room all they discovered was the homespun cloak and the straw sandals that Hamid had brought with him from his shepherd's shack. So the Shah-in-Shah called Hamid to him and said, what is the meaning of this? And Hamid said, Sire, I am who I am because of you. And each day I go into this room to don my shepherd's cloak and my straw sandals to remind me of from whence I came. Well, after this, the Shah-in-Shah loved Hamid even more. He didn't want to have him out of his sight. And, but there was an occasion. It so happened that there was an ambassador coming from a far-off place, and the Shah-in-Shah felt it wasn't his place to entertain him, so he asked Hamid to arrange a great reception for this ambassador. Well, on the evening of the reception held in Hamid's palatial residence, he donned his Grand Vizier's clothes, magnificent silken cloaks, and then he put on his Grand Vizier's hat. And just as he was about to go to the reception hall, he caught sight of himself in the mirror. And looking in the mirror, he said, Hamid, look at you. A mere shepherd boy, and look what it is that you've become. And so he preened himself and congratulated himself on his illustrious position. Well, it was even whispered in the court that this reception was better than what the Shah-in-Shah gave himself. And this was told to Hamid, of course, too. And then there was another occasion when the Shah-in-Shah and Hamid were walking in the garden in the winter time when the garden was very bare, but the Shah-in-Shah happened to look up, and there, growing out of a hole in the palace wall, was a single rose. The Shah-in-Shah said, I want that flower. Oh, said Hamid, climb on my shoulders, sire, and I will take the flower. No, said the Shah-in-Shah, you stand on my shoulders. So as Hamid was standing on the Shah-in-Shah's shoulders, reaching for the flower, he had a thought. Look at you, Hamid the shepherd, standing on the shoulders of the greatest Shah-in-Shah in all the world, and he preened himself. Well, not long afterwards, and it happened that because the Shah-in-Shah loved him so much, every day when the Shah-in-Shah went into his chamber of chambers, highly guarded, to take his afternoon nap, he insisted that he place his head on Hamid's lap and slept. Well, one day, when Hamid was sitting there with the Shah-in-Shah's head on his lap as he slept, all of a sudden, in front of him appeared this young man wearing a long cloak. And Hamid was greatly shocked. How did you get through all the guards? Who are you? What are you doing here? And with that, of course, a Grand Vizier always had a dagger on his person, and he took out his dagger. And with that, the young man said, I am your luck, and I'm here to tell you I'm going to sleep. So just at that moment, the Shah-in-Shah woke up and found Hamid with the dagger held above him, and the young man had disappeared. So of course when the Shah-in-Shah woke up and found his beloved Hamid with the dagger above him, all he could think of was that Hamid was going to kill him. So he called the guards and had Hamid taken away. What could he do? Even though he loved him, the price would be to have his head lopped. But there were those who revered Hamid, even though there were many that were jealous of him, and they pleaded to the Shah-in-Shah to save Hamid's life. And because of the love and that the Shah-in-Shah had for Hamid, he decided to show him mercy and merely had him banished from the palace, seemingly forever. Now, Hamid, dressed in his shepherd's cloak and wearing his straw sandals, left the palace and wandered for days and days, it seemed weeks and months maybe, begging where he could, finding rest where he could. But then he came to a place where there was a farmer growing wheat. And when he presented himself, the farmer said, "Oh, I've just lost my servant. Perhaps you can come and help me grind the wheat, for which you can have your food and board." So Hamid became the grinder of wheat. Every day he turned the great wheel that ground into flour, and every night he lay down exhausted into sleep. But one of the great qualities of Hamid was that he had due diligence. Everything he did with great attention and care. So he served the farmer well. He was in the service of the farmer for 7 long years. But then, one night, as Hamid lay down, his body racked with the weariness of turning the wheel all day long, just before he went to sleep, there appeared in front of him the young man in his long robe again. Hamid was greatly surprised, and the young man said, "I'm your luck, and I'm here to tell you I'm waking up." At that very night, that young man appeared in the dream of the Shah-in-Shah, and as it happened, in those 7 years that had passed, the kingdom had gone into decline. But the Shah-in-Shah had the dream. The young man appeared to him in the dream and said, "Your kingdom will only prosper with your Grand Vizier. Find him, restore him to his position." Now when the Shah-in-Shah woke up, he put great validity in this dream and immediately sent out search warrant to find Hamid. It took some time to do so, but when they did, they brought Hamid back to the palace, and he was greeted with great ceremony and great love by the Shah-in-Shah. So for us, To make that quantum leap, to discover the secret, all we have to do is translate for ourselves, from our own experience, what is luck? What's another word for that which in this story is called luck?
Fate. Fate.
Fate and destiny are something tangible that we can recognize. But luck is something that represents something else in this story. The divine, yes, we can call it that.
Life itself.
Life itself. All right?
And his focus.
Yes.
He kept attention to what he's doing.
But in order to claim it for ourself, to claim it for ourself, to recognize that that's been there all along, and we know when it's not been there, as in this story, and we know what it is on those other levels of stories that allow us to recognize what it was in this story that made it not present for him, seemingly. How do we claim that? That has been called the secret that's contained in every story, but which we can now give a name in our heart of hearts. It's ours. We have to claim it.
Our essence?
Our essence, yes, indeed our essence, yes. But how do we make it real for us? How do we claim it so that it never leaves us again? What name will you give it? Grace, yes. Grace, yes, that's the outcome of it.
Self-love.
Self-love, yes. But this self, I mean, some people call it the big self, and call the ego mind the little self. So it's valid, isn't it? And if that's a word that works for us. So what is it? What name are you going to give it? Your real self? Your God self? What? Claim it. How do we grab this secret that allows us then to see the secret in everything, every experience? The divine self, yes.
God.
God, we can call it, yes.
Attention and being present.
Yes.
There's a spook that hangs around everything.
Yes. Yes. That's it. But that's our challenge, and that's the beginning of our next link in this chain of stories. So let's see where it leads us in the coming days. In the meantime, that's homework.
Very